All right, let's dive into a really powerful framework for understanding life. Now, we're not talking about a religious text or some kind of ideology. Think of this more as a dynamic system, a kind of operating manual for being human. You could even call it a user's guide to the life you're already living. And this is our ground rule for today. We're setting aside all the usual labels, all the baggage. The whole point here isn't to pick up a new belief system. It's about thinking from the ground up, first principles. It's about connecting the dots for ourselves, based on the fundamental way we experience the world. So let's start with a big question, a really big one. What if your life isn't just random? What if it actually operates like a contract? A binding agreement with specific terms that you entered into the very moment you were born. Just thinking about that one single idea, it changes everything about how we see our journey. Okay, so let's really unpack this core idea. Life as a contract. A contract implies structure, right? It's got a beginning, a middle full of actions and choices, and then a final settlement. When you look at life this way, it gives you a kind of blueprint for understanding your purpose, your challenges, and ultimately your own accountability. This one sentence, this is the whole journey in a nutshell. It's the thesis of this whole explainer. We start out with some kind of innate purpose. Then, the world comes along and layers its own programming right on top of us. We have to navigate that tension with our choices. And then, in the end, we come face to face with a perfect reflection of the path we walked. So let's break down each piece of that. So the first thing to get your head around is that we don't start as blank slates. In this framework, we arrive preloaded with a specific direction, an innate command. Now, this isn't about some fixed destiny. It's more like having an original vector, a starting trajectory, long before the world ever gives us a name or a story to follow. Let's start building out the model for this contract. Step 1 is ignition, the moment of entry. This is the spark that kicks off the whole process, where all that potential becomes actual. It's the moment the contract officially becomes active. And right at the very beginning, we're given 3 things. First, there's matter. That's our physical foundation. Second, there's energy, the life force that gets it all moving. And third, there's command. This is the innate direction, the original software we come installed with. This is our starting kit for the entire journey ahead. And this brings us to, the central conflict of being human. As soon as we enter the world, a whole new process kicks off. The world, with all its societies, its cultures, its expectations, it starts writing its own code right over our original programming. And that is where the real test begins. So our life flow diagram keeps going. After we make our entry, we're plunged into time and experience. This is the arena, the playing field, where we run up against all the world's influences. And all of that leads us right here to the command center, our ability to choose. This is the place where we have to decide which program to run, our original one or the world's overwrite. This just lays it all out, doesn't it? It perfectly illustrates that core conflict. On one side, you've got your pure original potential. And on the other, you have this tangled mess of the world's overwrite. The name you were given, the identity that was assigned to you, the fears that were conditioned into you. The entire challenge of life is just figuring out how to navigate the tension between these 2 columns. So here's the absolute crucial point. The biggest mistake we can make, according to this framework, isn't about rejecting a belief. No, it's losing the ability to tell the difference between the identities and fears that were just handed to us and the path we consciously, deliberately chose for ourselves. That confusion is the root of so much of our struggle. And this, of course, brings us to the end of the contract's term. But instead of seeing death as just an empty void, this model reframes it as a return. It's a moment of ultimate clarity where the full ledger of all our choices is finally revealed. And here it is, the full picture from our command center. From that place of choice, our actions forge a path. Every single decision creates this path, and it leads directly, inevitably, to the final step, the mirror of return. This is where our entire journey is reflected back to us as just undeniable truth. So what do we really mean by return? Well, it's not about judgment or punishment from some outside force. It's much simpler and maybe more profound than that. It's just organized clarity. Your life's experience is presented back to you as a witness, with no masks, No stories, no justifications. It's a moment of pure, unfiltered confrontation with yourself. So, what about ideas like hell and paradise? Well, in this model, they aren't physical places you go to. They're internal, psychological states that are revealed in that moment of return. Hell is that feeling of constriction, that tightness, when you see a life lived out of sync with your original direction. And paradise? That's the feeling of relief, of expansion, when you see a life that was lived in harmony with it.
Now, I know this might all seem very philosophical, but it actually leads to an incredibly practical tool. If life really is a contract that ends in this moment of return, how can we check in on our progress? How do we make sure we're living intentionally? Well, that's where the daily human audit comes in.
This is how you can actually apply this framework starting today, just by asking 5 questions. Origin. What feels truly mine and not just imposed on me? Time. How did I actually use my awareness today? Command. What story was driving my choices? Path. What did my actions really create? And finally, return. If today were mirrored back to me, would I recognize myself? It's a really simple tool for self-accountability without any of the guilt. And this statement, it really just distills the entire system down into a personal declaration. It's the full arc of the contract, right? The initial direction, the world's pressures, the constant test of choice, and then the final truth. It's a reminder that through your actions, you are the one who decides what remains when all the masks finally come off.
And so we have to end here with you. Because this whole framework, this living contract, it isn't just an idea to be understood. It's a question to be lived. When your contract term is finally up and that mirror of return appears, reflecting back the sum total of all your choices, will the person you see be a stranger, or will you recognize yourself?